Romance in Istanbul. The first rays of the sun stretched across the Bosphorus, casting a golden hue over Istanbul's ancient skyline. The city, with its blend of east and west, was waking up to a new day. But for Yavuz Karaca, the most feared mafia leader in Istanbul, the morning had already begun in the dark hours before dawn. Yavuz was not a man who allowed the sun to dictate his schedule. His empire, built on a foundation of loyalty and fear, demanded his constant attention. As the head of the Karaca family, he was responsible for everything that happened in Istanbul's underworld. Smuggling, protection rackets, and black market deals all fell under his domain. Yet, Yavuz was not just a man of crime, he was a man of principle with a strict code of honor. His word was as good as gold, and his enemies feared his wrath as much as they respected his integrity. On this particular morning, however, something felt different. There was an unease in the air, a sense that the city itself was holding its breath. Yavuz's instincts, honed over years of navigating the treacherous waters of organized crime, told him that something was amiss. He stood by the large window in his opulent mansion, looking out over the city that he controlled. The sea breeze carried with it the faintest scent of salt and the distant hum of a city on the verge of waking. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the heavy oak door creaking open. It was Emre, his most trusted lieutenant. "Patron," Emre said, bowing slightly out of respect. "There's something you need to see." Without a word, Yavuz turned and followed Emre through the dimly lit hallways of his mansion. They descended into the basement, a place where few were allowed to go. It was here that Yavuz kept his most important secrets. In the center of the room stood a large table, and on it was a map of Europe, marked with pins and notes. Around the table, several of Yavuz's top advisors were gathered, their faces tense. "What is it?" Yavuz asked, his voice low and commanding. Emre pointed to the map. "The Russians. They've moved closer to the Bosphorus. Intelligence suggests they're planning something big, something that could involve an invasion." Yavuz narrowed his eyes. The Russians had been a constant thorn in his side, but this was different. An invasion would threaten not just his operations, but the very fabric of the city he called home. He had heard rumors of increased Russian activity, but he hadn't expected them to move so quickly. "And there's more," Emre continued. "We've received word that a British and French couple is in the city. They're diplomats, high-ranking. If the Russians find out they're here, it could be disastrous. We need to get them out of the city, and fast." Yavuz didn't need to think twice. The British and the French were no friends of the Russians, and any move to protect them would be a direct affront to the Russian plans. It was risky, but Yavuz had never been one to shy away from risk.
フェアーゼナウ? ヤブズアスクド.
"We've hidden them in one of our safe houses in Beyoğlu," Emre replied. "But they won't be safe there for long. The Russians have eyes everywhere." Yavuz nodded, his mind already working out a plan. "Prepare a boat. We'll get them out through the Bosphorus. It's the only way." The sun was fully up by the time Yavuz arrived at the safe house. Beyoğlu was a bustling district, filled with narrow streets and old buildings, a place where secrets could be kept hidden if one knew how to navigate its labyrinthine alleys. Yavuz and his men approached the safe house discreetly, their presence unnoticed by the few early risers on the streets. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The British man, Charles, was pacing the room, his face lined with worry. His wife, Annabelle, sat on a worn-out sofa, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. The Frenchman, Jean-Luc, stood by the window, peering through the curtains, his expression grim. His wife, Isabel, was seated beside Annabelle, trying to comfort her. Yavuz entered the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. Charles stopped pacing and looked at Yavuz with a mix of hope and desperation. "You're Yavuz Karaca," Charles said, his voice tinged with the unmistakable accent of an Englishman.
Yes, Yavuz replied. And I'm here to get you out of the city.
Annabelle looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "The Russians, they're looking for us, aren't they?"
City.
"They are," Yavuz said bluntly. "But they won't find you. We're leaving now." Jean-Luc, ever the pragmatist, nodded. "And how do you plan to do that?" "The Russians will be watching every road, every port." "We're not going by road," Yavuz replied. "We're going by sea. I have a boat ready. We'll take you to a safe place until we can get you out of the country." There was no time for further discussion. Yavuz's men escorted the group out of the safe house, keeping to the shadows as they made their way to the docks. The streets of Istanbul were beginning to come alive with the sounds of the morning rush, but Yavuz and his team moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The boat was a small, sleek vessel, built for speed and discretion. Yavuz had used it many times before to transport goods and people in and out of the city without attracting attention. The group boarded quickly, and within minutes, they were cutting through the waters of the Bosphorus, leaving the city behind. As they sailed under the great bridges that spanned the strait, Yavuz kept a watchful eye on the horizon. The Russians were known for their patrols in these waters, and any encounter with them could be deadly. The tension on the boat was palpable, but Yavuz remained calm, his mind focused on the task at hand. The hours passed slowly as they made their way northward, the coastline of Istanbul gradually receding into the distance. Yavuz's men took turns at the helm, their eyes scanning the water for any sign of trouble. The passengers, too, remained vigilant, though their fear was tempered by the presence of Yavuz and his men. By late afternoon, they reached a small, secluded bay. It was a place known only to a few, a safe harbor where they could lay low until it was safe to continue their journey. The boat anchored, and the group disembarked, grateful for the chance to stretch their legs and breathe in the fresh air. Yavuz led them to a small cabin hidden among the trees. It was a simple place, but well stocked with supplies. "We'll stay here for the night," Yavuz said. "Tomorrow, we'll make the final leg of the journey." As night fell, the group gathered around a small fire, the warmth and light a welcome respite from the day's tension. Yavuz sat slightly apart from the others, his eyes reflecting the flames as he thought about what lay ahead. The Russians were relentless, and he knew that they would not give up easily. The night was long, but Yavuz did not sleep. He kept watch, his senses alert to any sign of danger. The forest around them was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. In the distance, the faint sound of waves lapping against the shore could be heard, a soothing reminder of their proximity to safety. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Yavuz roused the others. "It's time," he said simply. The group moved quickly, gathering their belongings and preparing to set sail once more. The boat was still anchored in the bay, its sleek lines barely visible in the dim light of the early morning. Yavuz and his men guided the passengers back on board, and within minutes, they were once again cutting through the waters of the Bosphorus. The sun rose higher, casting a golden glow over the sea as they made their way toward the Black Sea. Yavuz could feel the tension begin to ease as they put more distance between themselves and Istanbul. The Russians had not found them, and it seemed that they might just make it to safety. By midday, they reached the rendezvous point. A larger ship, flying the flags of Britain and France, awaited them. It was a welcome sight, a symbol of safety and the promise of freedom. Yavuz brought the boat alongside the ship, and one by one, the passengers climbed aboard. Charles and Annabelle were the first to express their gratitude, their faces etched with relief. Jean-Luc and Isabelle followed, their thanks sincere and heartfelt. Yavuz nodded, accepting their gratitude with a quiet grace. "Stay safe," he said, "and tell your governments what you've seen here. The Russians won't stop, but neither will we." With that, the transfer was complete. Yavuz watched as the larger ship pulled away, heading toward the open sea and the safety of international waters. He remained on the deck of his boat, the wind whipping through his hair as he watched the ship disappear into the distance. The sun was high in the sky by the time Yavuz turned the boat back toward Istanbul. He had done his duty, protected those who needed protection, and struck a blow against the Russians in the process. But he knew that the fight was far from over. As he sailed back toward the city he called home, Yavuz Karaca allowed himself a small smile. The shadows of the night had passed, but the dawn of a new day brought with it new challenges. And Yavuz was ready to face them, just as he always had. For in the world of shadows and light, only the strong survived. And Yavuz Karaca was the strongest of them all.